applications, and even when we see you in the classroom or before you get there, although I must admit, it was never something I wanted to do. So maybe that's why I ended up ending my career as a judge. But to speak on judgeships, we have the wonderful, see there's a second Judge Coleman in here too, board member. Yvonne, come on up and tell them about judgeships.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We had a busy day on the bench, so I must make sure I can stay awake tonight for the rest of the evening. I want to congratulate all the recipients. You all have done a marvelous job already, and I wish you the very best in your legal career. It's a profession that I adore. I am still passionate about it after decades as a member of the legal profession. I've been a judge for 6 years now. I practiced law for about 30 years before a little bit over 25 years before I became a judge. I always wanted to be a judge, but I never wanted to be a judge without having the experience and the background and the qualifications and the experience that I felt every judge should have when they join the bench. To tell you about how to become a judge, I'll explain in Illinois, and I'm talking about the Circuit Court of Cook County, the state of Illinois. I'm not talking about the federal bench right now, which of course is a very admirable route to take if you want to be a judge as well. But in Illinois, there are 3 ways to be a judge. One is to, after you've practiced law for a minimum, I would think, of 10 years or more, you can be appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court if there is a vacancy. If a judge retires or leaves the bench for whatever reason, dies. So you can be appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court. The second way is just to get out and run for a vacancy that occurs in the general election. Well, first you run in the primary and then the general election. And there's a vacancy either in one of the sub-circuits, or maybe you want to run in your entire county. We live in Cook County, so you'll be running countywide. So that's the second way. And the third way is a process that is ongoing right now, and that's as an associate judge. With the associate judges, they present applications to our chief judge because they want to become an associate judge, and the chief judge has a nominating committee and nominates certain individuals to run for associate judge. And they run and present their credentials, their experience, their evaluation to the Bar Association, to the circuit court judges. The circuit court judges select the associate judges. And the only real difference between the circuit judges and the associate judges really is the fact that we, circuit judges, we run through a public election, but we basically do the same work. We're all judges. There may be some cases that associate judges can't handle. I'm not really clear about those. If any other judges know, can you help me out on that? Are there some cases that associate judges are not allowed to do?
I think they're not supposed to do some certain criminal cases, but that rule is not strictly adhered to.
All right. So then you basically what we do. And their salary is similar. I think they make a little less than us, but it's very close. Same sort of benefits. So a lot of people run for associate judge because they run for that sort of election with the circuit court judges because they don't want to run for, an election throughout Cook County or throughout their sub-circuit, because that's a very costly and time-consuming way to become a judge. But it's a good way, and that's the route I took. I was appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court to a vacancy, but whenever you're appointed, if you want to remain in that seat, so to speak, you want to remain there, you have to run at the end of that term. So when the seat was vacated, and I was appointed in February or March, I can't remember what year. I remember the year, I can't remember what month, February, March, and then I had to run in the upcoming primary. And fortunately I did win, with the help of my friends here. And Fred was my treasurer. She did such a marvelous job. And the Bar Association, it's just amazing how we support each other throughout our careers. Whatever we want to do, whatever our goals and our aims are, we're always there for each other. So, that's about all I have to say about the judgeships, unless there's some.
But you can think of it in case at the end of all the presentations, You got questions because you want to wear the black robe. Thank you so much.
All right.
And remember, she told you about becoming a judge. Getting there, right? Well, but some of you have been experiencing and may want to experience further. And somebody who did experience this for a distinguished judge for whom the criminal courthouse here is named for, did their judicial clerkship. So our dear O'Neill, Professor Williams, is going to speak on clerkships for judges, as well as, remember, another thing, because you may not want to practice law, okay? But you might want to pass it on and keep the future. And how are you doing that? You teach, because he's been teaching here for, what is it now, Neil, over 30 years? And he gets you through your basics in law school and the bar, because he always teaches contracts.
That's right.
Here we go, Neil.
Thank you for those kind words, April. And I did have the honor of clerking for George N. Layton, who was a federal district judge for many years here in Chicago. He was also a civil rights luminary. And among other interesting things, when he was practicing, he represented a couple in Cicero who bought a home there. There was an ensuing riot by whites in the neighborhood. He was actually indicted for inciting a riot. Thurgood Marshall came to his defense, and those charges were quashed. But a lot of people have gone through a lot of travails in order for us all to have the opportunities that we do today. And one way to lay a foundation for gaining the experience, for example, in order to be a judge, is to get a clerkship. Work with the judge up close. Actually help draft, or at least prepare drafts of opinions that the judge will write. And in the course, you'll be exposed to the broad range of cases that come before the judge, which is some of the best preparation you can have to be an outstanding attorney. At most schools now, I know here at Loyola, we have a federal clerkship committee. I'm on it. And the goal is just to encourage students to apply for the clerkships. There are a lot of well-qualified students who just don't want to try. And in many cases, you might be successful. There is a system known as OSCAR. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's a computerized system that most federal judges at least look to in choosing whom they're going to interview. So get on OSCAR. You have to get included in OSCAR, letters of recommendation from people you've worked with, especially your professors. Even when you're outstanding, as Navia certainly is. She got to know. You should do that with every professor. I've seen students who get an A from a professor, and I say, well, get to know the professors. They can write you a letter of recommendation, and you're too shy to do it. Get to know professors, especially those with whom you've shown your excellence. There's a lot of competition for federal clerkships here in the Chicago area. Everybody from local law schools will be applying for those scholarships. A lot of people who've gone to places like Harvard and Yale and
NYU.
Stanford, NYU. They all want to come back home to Chicago. So I'm going to be honest with you. If you limit your search to Chicago, and federal clerkships available at the trial court, of the Court of Appeals in Chicago, you're gonna face a lot of competition. If you have the geographic flexibility, which will be more likely the case if you haven't yet reached that point in your life where you have family commitments, I strongly encourage you to send out applications all over the country. For example, I've seen instances here at Loyola, people may not have been able to get clerkships here in Chicago, not because they weren't well qualified, but just because of the high demand. There could be a federal judge out in a place like Colorado, and they'll look at your application, they're Catholic, and they're Jesuit. And all of a sudden, this is somebody, oh, I'm so glad they applied. Come on out and interview with me. So the more geographically flexible you are, the better the chances of getting a federal clerkship. And when you get that on your resume, it can open doors. Also keep this in mind. Particularly at the federal trial court level, a lot of judges don't want clerks straight out of law school. They actually prefer clerks who've been in practice a couple of years. And I don't know a firm in the country who, if you go and say, I want to take a year or two off in order to clerk for a judge, who wouldn't give you that opportunity. So also remember, these judges often are well known. Those judges to whom you can apply for clerkships after you've had a little practice experience. And don't forget that a lot of judges in Illinois and Chicago, for example, at the state level, they need great clerks. Apply to the Judge Coleman's and other judges on the Circuit Court of Cook County. Apply to the appellate judges here in Illinois. And I know we have someone who is a winner tonight who already is doing some work with Justice Neville on the Illinois Supreme Court. Maintain these networks. Apply, apply, apply. And opportunities will come. Justice Neville has come to me a number of times over the years because there is a cadre of clerks who aren't formally assigned to judges, but nonetheless will clerk for the Circuit Court of Cook County at a court of appeals. Those are great opportunities, and he says students or lawyers of color are way underrepresented. And remember, he wants to encourage more students also to apply for those positions. Next up in the equation is, I tell you, I love the job I do. I love teaching. And in many ways, it's more difficult to become a law professor now than it was when I came along 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago. Back then, most of the professors on the Loyola faculty were hired out of local law firms, bright people who decided they wanted to teach law. Now, in order to be seriously considered on many faculties, including this faculty, for a tenure track position, and there are a lot of advantages being on tenure track. Well, it's harder to fire you. It's very helpful, one, if you have the clerkship, particularly at the federal level, but get the clerkship. And the second thing is now there are a number of specialized programs across the country. I know the University of Chicago has a program. I know there's a program at the especially known for producing black graduates and other graduates of color. You go to the school, basically you get an advanced degree, but during that 2-year program, you will have the opportunity to write articles and to begin to teach. You'll be mentored by the best in the business, people whose name will open doors so you will be considered at law schools. So getting the clerkship and spend a couple of years on these specialized programs to prepare you for the law school education market. Right now, things are such that if you don't already have a couple of good articles at least under your belt, it's very difficult to get positions now at a law school. It's very different than was the case when I came up. But many of you also will do well in practice, be a lot better paid than I am as a law professor. And you can come back and be adjunct professors. We have a number of wonderful adjunct professors who get paid elsewhere and willingly come back and are given the opportunities to teach students. In many ways, that's the best of both worlds. So also keep that in mind. In order to open up those doors, get to know the academic dean at the law school you're interested in. I've known people who teach at a number of different area law schools. Let them know what you're interested in teaching and what your experience and background is. And those doors will open up during which you can get paid for your day job and have the pleasure of spreading knowledge and wisdom later on in the evening, fulfilling in another way your commitment